Hi, Jasper. It's good to be here as well. So my name's Andrew Chubb. I'm the CEO of Awalé Resources. I'm a geologist by trade and have been one for about 25 years now, I suppose. Um, I've got a protracted history in West Africa. So the last 14 years, I've been intimately associated with West Africa and its geology. I lived in Burkina Faso for not about, between 2010 and 2015. I was based in Burkina Faso and have built a good understanding of the socio-political climate around West Africa, along with the geology as well. And prior to that, I've had quite an international career. So worked on feasibility project in Tanzania, uranium, the Makuji River project. I was the exploration manager, and then various other projects globally. Rocha Montana one, and cut my teeth in on projects in Western Australia as a young geologist.
And how were you involved, or did you get involved with Awalé, and when?
Um, so I initially, Awali was born out of a company called Mariana, and when 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 Mariana was Mariana, that I was helped them put together some projects in Cote d'Ivoire. I went and looked at some properties that they were interested in. Odienné was one of them, and then there were a few others. And when Mariana got taken over by Sandstorm, I was asked to come on board as the technical lead for Awalé. So, and that sort of happened back in 2017, 2018, the actual sort of rebirth, I guess, from the Sandstorm takeover of Awalé Resources. And then, the company went through some difficult times, and I think, they were looking, in the difficult capital markets, the management looked to sort of go for a multi-project or even multi-jurisdiction idea, and that didn't really work. And so I was lucky enough to be introduced to Stephen Stewart in the Ore Group by some other Awali shareholders that were concerned about what was happening, and through those discussions, the Ore Group could see the concept around Odienné and I guess the vision for Odienné, and then they came in and did a financing, and through that financing, the incumbent CEO was asked to step down, and I stepped into the CEO role, and that all happened in May, toward the end of May last year. And so, during last year, we've cleaned up Awalé and put it in good standing, and been operating the joint venture with Newmont on the two joint venture permits that we have with them. So, and that's what's enabled the company to sort of progress as well, is that we haven't had to spend money raised on the capital markets to advance the project. We've had the funding on those two joint venture permits through Newmont.
And so Orecap is one of the largest shareholders of Awalé, owns 13%, 13.3%, I think. And then of course Ore Group is you're one of the Ore Group companies now. So what's could you tell us more about Ore Group, and also the synergies and its involvement in Awalé?
Absolutely. I mean, look, when we did that financing, I guess Ore Group and sort of Ore Group associates of Stephen put in $1.5 million, and then myself and the chairman Robin, through the financing was all done with Beacon, but we put together another 800,000, so that was a $2.3 million raise, which gave us, Ore Group recognised the trouble the company was in, but also recognised the value or the potential value of the Odienné project. And I think where another Charles Beaudry from Ore Group actually came onto the board as well, and he was, I guess, Stephen Stewart's sort of lead technical guy that looked at what we had been doing at Odienné, and listened to the broader idea of iron oxide copper gold deposits, and that we've potentially got a new district similar to other IOCG provinces. And luckily for us, Charles was the chief geologist or a lead geologist for Noranda in the early days of Carias. So when the discovery started being made at Carias and those IOCG systems were starting to be discussed there, Charles was intimately involved with the geology there. So he recognised the things that we were talking about and looking at the geochemistry and the geology of the things we were talking about. He could see similarities between what we were seeing in Odienné and what we were seeing in Carias. So that was a key, kind of lucky for us, I guess, in a way as well, that there was somebody there who could recognise what the ideas that we had for the project. And so I think Ore Group, they're a really interesting group in market. Their strategy was that when markets were low, that they would look for projects for acquisition. And so American Eagle and Baseload were one of the first two ones, and then there's Mustango River, a gold company with projects in BC as well as part of that. And Stephen's sort of strategy was find distressed projects that warrant more love and funding, and marry them with the right people to try and bring them forward. And so in a way, that's what he did with Awalé, but we were the first company that they had looked at in Africa, or West Africa. And also, I think we were the first direct equity investment, rather than sort of taking a distressed asset, purchasing it, and then rebuilding that asset. So we were the first direct equity investment, I believe, but it's still effectively the same strategy, like get the right people behind the company, and then make sure it's funded to move forward in the right way.
The past month really has been very tumultuous and also transformational. First, you had some very significant intercept at your BBM discovery, and then you had your one of the best discoveries in decades really at Charger. How's the past weeks been, and also what have Newmont communicated to you?
Well, look, for me, the things have changed dramatically in that it's not us trying to put ourselves in front of people and get them to listen to the story. We've now been approached by many people who want to hear the story. So that's been really nice for me and the company to be able to get the story out and the bigger picture out across to many, many people over the last 2 weeks. And then, I mean, so yes, it's created a huge amount of interest, and being able to have BBM and then follow that up with Charger is really made a big difference. Newmont, look, the conversations with them at the moment are steer the course, which I can understand as well. So we have a $3.5 million budget in place. The bulk of that budget is going towards drilling. We planned 25,000 meters of drilling based on that budget. Last year, we had a $3 million budget, but at the end of the year, we got contingency of an extra $750,000. I think they just want to continue on that basis, I guess, which is still plenty of work, plenty of drilling, advancing the targets that we have, and also, again, still trying to bring along pipeline targets behind that.
Okay, so let's move to Odienné. Odienné shows characteristics of being an IOCG or an iron oxide copper gold system. Could you explain the IOCG model and how that fits into Odienné?
Yeah, so in a broader context, IOCG refers to the alteration system, the underlying geology as well. There are many different IOCGs globally, and I think our province compares quite well to other provinces of the same age. So there are also much younger IOCG districts in sort of Chile, Peru, but the Proterozoic sort of age ones are sort of where we have looked at and where we think we fit. And so the alteration system is important. We have this regional potassic alteration. There is, which is similar to the early days of the Carias. When they started to drill deeper into that system there, they got a lot of sodic alteration. The iron oxide component is, associated with hematite and magnetite alteration, in which we have on a district scale in Odienné. And there are other factors like, what we call bimodal volcanism. So we have this felsic and intermediate volcanism that occurs throughout the property, and that's also one of the indicators. So the Olympic Dam province has bimodal volcanism. So does the Carias province. So there are all these factors that point towards that IOCG style, and these deposits, they range in size and grade, but the provinces themselves are huge contributors to the global metal inventory. So, and we see this at Odienné. We've got multiple discoveries, and what we see is a mineralization and alteration that is similar across all those discoveries, so we can stitch them together and as being part of the same mineralizing system. But what we see is sort of like, if you think of it like on a continuum, where we have an end member that's the gold to copper ratio is higher in some of the manifestations, or the copper to gold ratio is higher in other manifestations. And it's the local geology and structural framework that's driving what these things look like in the different zones that we've drilled and targeted.
Okay, so here you're speaking of it as one IOCG system.
Yeah.
If I may recall correctly, but you have separate discoveries. At least they are, a couple of 100 meters to a few kilometers away from each other. So
they're all within a 15. If you think of it in
a
radius, they're all within a 15-kilometer radius. The discoveries that we've made.
Okay, but you view it as one system, where Sceptre East might be the center, or how do you? What's your
I guess we view the system as much bigger. So it's on a district scale. So locally, Sceptre East might be central, but there are multiple other intrusions around that I think are driving mineralization as well. And I guess you learn these things as you move on, because there's also, I guess, a timing thing around these things. So Sceptre East is actually outcropping at surface, but where it was formed was probably a bit deeper. And whereas where these things are forming through, vertically, I guess, through the system and things like that. So they've got timing implications. So I mean, Sceptre East could be a part of a broader story as being a central thing, or it's just a spatially central. I don't have a hypothesis right now on. There's nothing geologically yet that's giving us absolute something definitive that Sceptre East is in the middle, or the main driver of the system, right? It could just be geographically in the middle, rather than a driver of the whole system. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. But then, how's your thesis regarding, because you have firstly your 100% owned Taraka permit to the east, and then you have a joint venture permit to the west, Odienné West, if you may call it that. What's your thesis on sort of the system going into spilling into your other permits?
Yeah, so I think a key thing is that in any system, there are structural controls to where you get intrusions that are coming up into the geology that are potentially a little bit later. where they actually manage to find their way higher into crustal levels, that's through structural controls. So everything has a structural control. So I tend to refer to this as like hybrid, because I think it's an intrusive related system, but there are structural control, and we actually sit as well. And I guess it's a little bit like a double whammy. So you've got this intrusive related system as well as a huge basin margin structure that goes for hundreds and hundreds of kilometres from where we are in Côte d'Ivoire out through Guinea and out towards Western Mali. And those belt basin margin structures are old, deep-seated, and those and their subsidiary structures have controlled fluid flow, intrusion in placement, all sorts of things for a very protracted period of time. And so I think it's almost like a double whammy in that we've got this belt basin margin running up to the north side of our properties, and BBM appears to be intimately related to it. The new Lando or the Lando aspect is related to it as well. So all these things are interrelated, and so we've just got two big factors coming into the or potential drivers of mineralization in the properties. And so where we have pegged our other permits, it's a long strike following that big basin margin structure.
Thank you. And just for all non-geologists here, what does it mean that a system is, or a deposit is structurally controlled?
Sorry, what does it mean that a system is structurally controlled? Is that what you asked?
Yes.
Yes. So that's what I mean. Like, so long or aged structures control where fluids, they form for fluid, what you would call a fluid pathway. So they control where mineralizing fluids can get closer to surface or move along in a more concentrated fashion. So you get fluids that are, with orogenic systems, you get fluids that are, I guess, as everything's getting squashed, things are getting passed through sort of porous parts of the geology, and then you hit structures and they all join and the fluids pass towards surface. They depressure, so you depressure, lose heat, and drop out minerals. And those fluid pathways also, so those big structures and their subsidiary structures control where intrusive bodies can get pushed higher up into the crust. So, it's not sort of random where these magmas get higher. There is weaknesses in the crust which are formed by these structures where those magmas push higher into the crust. Yeah, so it helps things get higher up in the crust as far as those magmas and emplacement of intrusions higher.
And from an explorationist point of view, does that makes it easier to predict where mineralization should end up or should be contained?
I mean, it's one of the factors that we look at to try and direct where you should be to find mineral deposits. Absolutely. Like big crustal scale structures are important.
Perfect. Thank you. So then we'll move on to your BBM prospect. So could you summarize what you have learned about BBM so far?
BBM is a structurally hosted discovery. There is a shear zone that follows a contact between the deep water basin sediments to the north side and an intrusion, and the structure appears to follow that contact. We could see from mapping lithogeochemistry from our geochemistry and the pathfinder elements, everything spoke to each other so nicely that we just drilled 4 holes targeted at sort of where all those things overlapped perfectly and hit the structure. And now, I mean, we've only drilled 3,500 meters of BBM in 18 holes. And all of those 18 holes in that initial 2 kilometer zone have drilled into the structure. And all those holes are mineralized from, weakly to obviously quite strongly mineralized. In the central sort of 1 kilometer, or in the central 1 kilometer, well, actually it's central 1 kilometer zone, we've got a 500 meter zone that is drilled on 150 meter sections. We can see a plunging chute, so the geology is speaking to where the grade is, and it, so we've delineated an initial 500 meter long zone that would be, average width of say 40 meters at this stage, and running at that, 1.5 to 2.5 grams gold equivalent. So we've delineated an initial zone that looks very nice. We believe that in that 2 kilometer initial zone that we've drilled, that we can, we potentially find other plunging chutes within that based on the shallower drilling that we've done. We've hit the same structure, we've got the same mineralization, it's just a little bit thinner. So, we're targeting over 2 million ounces in that initial zone. And it sits along an 8 kilometer long anomaly. And that 8 kilometer anomaly has high tenor geochem pods along it, which are similar to the pod that we drilled. So we think there's potential for satellite targets along that 8 kilometers of strike of that BBM anomaly. So yeah, it's a tabular ore body, right? So tabular ore bodies are a geologist's dream, because they're a little bit easier to work out in the long run, and then you've got something that you can chase quite quickly.
I guess we start with a tabular ore body. What is that?
It's like a panel. So it's this thing that is flat and looks like like a domino or something like that. Like if you think of a rectangular box, a shoebox or something, it's just appears to be quite, initially appears to be quite sort of simple in its geometry.
And so the primarily sort of, how do I say it, the low-hanging fruits of adding minerals or adding ounces at BBM is really to find more ore shoots along strike.
Yeah, that's right. And so, it's something that we can quickly and easily chase.
Currently you have one sort of main, and that's where you had your significant intercept earlier this year, where you have one main ore shoot, and then you have several.
So we think that there could be other subsidiary ones, based on the fact that the drilling we've done is shallow. We've seen the same alteration, but it's 10 meters wide. Same alteration, mineralization, but the tenor's not quite as high, but it's there and not quite as wide. So it's like you're potentially drilling over other chutes. So you look deeper and around those based on the same geometry as the chute that we've discovered.
But then, so let's speak dimensions and geometry. So your whole 74 hit your main ore chute.
Yep, and it's right in the middle.
The average width is around 40 meters. How deep could it be, and also how the length?
Yeah, okay. So that hole 74 is the deepest hole that we've drilled, and the mineralization starts at roughly 220 meters vertical depth. So we haven't drilled very deep there yet. And the mineralization, we got 75 meters of mineralization. So the true width is probably about 50 to 55 meters there. And we do actually start to see, we have seen a few specks, not much, but a few specks of visible gold in some of the deeper holes. And at the moment, with the limited amount of drilling, it looks like we're getting a grade increase with depth as well. We don't have a lot of data points yet. Like I said, there's only 18 holes, and we've done pretty well to be able to delineate what we have with only 3,500 meters of drilling. But we know that from Empire and Charger that mineralization in the district, there's a free gold component, and so maybe we get lucky and there's an uptick in grade as well as once we start drilling deeper into the BBM system as well. So that's really quite nice. And yeah, that tabular ore body, you just think of it as like a large scale domino, right? So you've got strikes, you've got depth, and then you've got width, and it's just flat.
Based on what you know now, how could BBM potentially be mined?
Look, it's at the moment, it's we've only drilled down to that. Like I said, that intercept starts at 240 meters, 220 meters vertical. So we, for all intents and purposes, you would look at open pit, and if we get upticks in grade with depth, like it looks like it is, there's potential that you would go underground with it as well. But we don't know that until we do more drilling. But I think to have a upwards of 2 million ounce target for that initial 2 kilometer zone is not unrealistic.
So with that, we'll move to Charger. So could you summarize what you have learned about Charger so far?
So it is a Breccia system, and it's visible gold driving the high grade. The grade that we're getting is, when we get the higher grades, it's sort of it is disseminated, so there doesn't tend to be, well, particularly in the hole that hole 83. There's no particular high grade zone like at 2 kilograms per ton or something like that that's carrying that broader interval. With 32 meters at sort of 46, was it 45.7 grams? So it is disseminated through that, and it is visible gold, and I think it was a little bit higher than the other VG intercepts that we drilled previously, because there is a bit of a very fine dusting of gold in there, as well as the sort of more 1 to 2 millimeter kind of grains, or that half millimeter to 2 millimeter grains that exist within that as well. The inference at the moment is that they are pipes, but where the pipes are coming up shallower levels, we think that there is, again, like for what I'm talking about, a structural control where the Breccia has been able to push. So all that fluid flow, all that fluid activity has been able to push higher. But we think that there's a northeast structural control. So if you think about the pipes, I could keep talking about your hand and your fingers of these pipes coming up. So we think there might be a northeast structural control where those pipes start to join together. But then there is potentially also an even bigger target at depth, where the whole thing coalesces, particularly if the brecciation is driven by a late intrusion coming up into the system. So there's the drilling that we're doing now. It's the first thing is to test around 83 to see if that northeast, so we've drilled 3 pipes now, and maybe that northeast orientation, using that northeast orientation, we can start to connect those pipes together at a shallower level. And then we would drill underneath to look where we are, and then step back and drill even further underneath, along with sort of scissor holes to try and get better handle on, I guess, that third dimension of what the pipes look like. But that's what the 3,000 meters that's planned encompasses.
What approach led up to the Charger discovery at first, and also what
all
approach
our discoveries are based on the same. All the discoveries are based on the same process, which is geochemistry, geophysics, and drill. We do quite a lot of work with the geochemistry, lithochemistry, working on what the pathfinders are, and then overlaying that with geophysics to get an initial structural framework. So Charger, we actually drilled the first holes at Charger pre-Newmont and didn't have a lot of funding, and so we hadn't done the ground geophysics. So we drilled holes based on geochemistry, and the discovery hole, which was 21 meters at 2.6 grams plus up to 0.7% copper. The interesting thing that was those initial holes at Charger was what led us down the intrusive related and iron oxide copper gold path, because that was the first time we saw this really strong hematite alteration with magnetite, particularly in the surrounds, but magnetite alteration as well. And so we drilled underneath that, and we sort of got the hematite. We got the right potassic and hematite alteration, but didn't get the breccia. And we actually then sort of scrambled up some money to do some ground geophysics at Charger, and we built a structural framework around that ground geophysics. We picked on a west-northwest to east-west structural orientation and started drilling into that towards the northeast. We found 2 breccia pipes other than the initial discovery further to the south, and we were getting nice grades in them. I think the best was 32 meters at 3 grams per ton, plus copper, plus silver. And so we were quite happy with that. But when we stepped out, we sort of lost the pipes and again got the right alteration. So we went back and we had started looking at the northeast as a structural control. We actually, the last hole of that program, we got a few meters at a couple of grams in a prominent northeast trending structure. And then the last program, we drilled 4 holes, particularly thinking about that northeast orientation. So we had a step back potential third pipe target. We had drill hole 83, which was specifically drilled in the zone where we had mineralization before. So sort of under that initial discovery hole, which was RC89, and then keeping on towards where we had seen the other breccia pipe. So effectively, it was a confluence, an interpreted confluence between northeast and east-west. And we got the thickest hit of breccia to date, and we got that really beautiful high-grade gold mineralization, which is, what we were getting previously at 50 to 100 gram meters, we were pretty happy with, but this really sort of knocked it out the park. So it was, I guess there's a little bit of tenacity there because breccia systems are a little bit harder to work out, but they can also be extremely rewarding from a grade perspective.
Excellent. And so I guess we could start with, as you said, there is a breccia pipe, or the large breccia pipe is below the smaller breccia pipe, which you found on hole RC89. Why, do you have any idea why they don't connect?
Well, I think it
connect?
just didn't. So these things are not necessarily linear. So where we drilled the holes, we probably missed it, and what actually got to surface was small, right? So we saw all this alteration, but not so much the brecciation, and so what we got at surface was just small, and it was just like a little gasp that managed to get up higher. There's some chalcopyrite veining, and there's the right alteration, and some really the brecciation is really quite coarse. So the pit that Artisanals dug subsequent to our drilling, it's not a very big pit. It was probably 20, 30 meters long and 10 meters wide. But the clasts are massive, like up to 1 meter. So I think sort of that last gasp got up there, and that's what we saw in that drill hole. But underneath, it's just more strongly manifest before it just sort of dwindled out to get to those upper levels. And it's potentially as simple as that.
What are the next steps for Charger? In terms, I know you said you have begun drilling at Charger again.
So it's that framework drilling. So sort of testing that northeast orientation, some step outs, sort of northeast and southwest of 83, testing that northeast fluid pathway or orientation, and seeing if through that we can actually connect the breccia pipes that sit behind with that one along that northeast orientation, and then scissor holes to sort of try and get a better 3D understanding, and then deeper drilling, like underneath underneath where we've got the hits and potential and a, you know, and a proper deep hole, like a bigger step back that's, you know, kind of that 600 odd meter hole, maybe a bit more, that tests deeper into the charger system. And it's kind of what I call frameworking. So you're building a framework and trying to understand what the potential volumes are and what you would be drilling at, to start to think about from a resource perspective. And it's the same thing for BBM. Like, so you are framework drilling to try and get line of sight on how many million ounces you would be going towards resource drilling. So it's still very much kind of exploration, looking for plunging shoots and things like that at BBM as well.
Super, and add to that, you will have IP. Sorry, and you will also, and to help your exploration, you will use IP.
Oh yeah,
to
okay.
more,
So
do an
we've actually got
IP
IP ongoing at the moment. So we've thinking about that deeper targeted charger. We've done some deep IP there. We should be getting the results through soon, from the lines of deeper IP that we did, and then we skipped a step at BBM because we usually do IP before we drill, but the geology, geochemistry, and the magnetics spoke to each other so nicely that we didn't do it. But we're actually going in there now and doing an orientation survey at BBM as well, which will help us, which we hope will help us target on those satellite, potential satellite pits along strike from BBM. And then as a third, we're actually doing some more deep IP at Sceptre East, with the view that maybe we can drill a better part of the system at Sceptre East and get an uptick. So the average grade we've been drilling is probably 0.35, 0.4% copper equivalent, with some nice higher grades within it, both gold and copper, and moly. And so, you know, if we can actually drill something that's consistently higher grade, like 0.5, 0.6% copper equivalent, then we may be well on the way to, you know, putting together something that could be very big, at that, you know, large tonnage, lower grade sort of target size at Sceptre as well.
You have not drilled below 300 meters, so this year you will help. IP will help you to hopefully vector into higher grade mineralization and probably also deeper.
Yeah. So the idea is that we are doing a deeper IP. So it's all, so we do longer lines with bigger electrode spacing. So the data's a bit more coarse, but you look a lot deeper.
Just quickly could sort of add to the dimensions or the scale of the footprint of Sceptre East.
Sceptre East sits within a broader 20 kilometre square copper anomaly, which has got gold all the way through it as well. But the Sceptre East, what we divide off into the Sceptre East anomaly particular, it's a much higher order copper moly than gold anomaly, whereas the other end of Sceptre, like 5 kilometres away, it's much more gold rich than copper. So the whole Sceptre thing over that 5 kilometres of strike is what I was talking about previously. So on the eastern end, it's a higher copper to gold ratio in the geochem, and on the western end, it's a higher gold to copper ratio in the geochemistry. But so that Sceptre East target itself is a little bit over 1.5 kilometres long. Now, this is a high order copper anomaly, a little bit over copper plus gold anomaly, a little bit over 1.5 kilometres long, and at least a kilometre wide in the central zone. The intrusion and the anomalism seems to taper off a little bit at each end, but it's a huge target, 1.5 kilometres by 1 kilometre long in the middle, with a very high chargeability anomaly running along the northern margin, and another high chargeability anomaly sort of coming up from the southwest. So it is a really interesting target that definitely warrants more work. And then we've got the Lando target. We'll keep working on Lando. I think Lando. I mean, the footprint at Lando, based on everything that we know, the footprint at Lando is fantastic, but it just hasn't at this stage. It hasn't given up its its little secrets yet, if you like, and we just need to keep working on the geology to unravel what's going on, because you don't get big footprints like that for no reason at all. It's a significant footprint there.
But at Lando, so when are you still have some drill results to release? When do you expect to release this month?
Yeah, hopefully later this month they'll actually come out. But I've seen the core, and the core looks like the first 2 holes that we drilled. Maybe broader, like longer intervals of something quite similar is what I've seen in the core. And but like I say, I think it's a huge anomaly, and we've been focusing on where the geology actually outcrops. But from the geophysics, like the mag, and it looks like there might be an intrusive contact further to the east, and maybe that's sort of where we should be rather than where we've been focused right now, which is, dominantly basaltic rocks. So, it just, like I said, we just need to keep, working on that target, because it is a very pretty target. And from that tenor of the anomaly and size of the anomaly perspective, it will, there's this little bit of confidence there that, we just need to keep working up that geology, and it will come.
Perfect. And then, so we will move on to Empire. So Empire was your first gold discovery. You had some good, good intercepts, solid gram meters. You just drilled it 120 meters vertically. Is this the year where you're returning to
maybe not this year. I think Empire will come back into the play when resource drilling sort of starts. And because we did find deeper offsets to Empire as well. And it's got beautiful down plunge potential. So the grade's really nice, and the down plunge potential's great. And so, it absolutely warrants deeper drilling, and I think that'll come into play, kind of next year when we start doing more drilling, and it really does have to start to come into play at some stage there. But it's beautiful high grade mineralization that, as a small company, we just couldn't warrant spending that extra money on those deeper holes at the time.
Odienné West, the second joint venture permit with Newmont. What's the plans for Odienné West? And also, if you could add, I know there's a shear zone running through it, but other than that, I don't know much about it.
We've got we've done regional bleg sampling. There is bleg anomalism that comes along the margins of the Odienné West permit and out towards the northeast, the northwest. And so the issue is there that it's not granted at this stage. We think it will be granted soon. So we've sort of taken it to the point where we need to get the permit granted before we start doing more intensive geochemistry and fly geophysics. So, but that should come very soon. I mean, it should be very soon that permit is actually granted.
And then, so you have Taraka and your other 100% owned permits. So, on what permits, and also what work will you be doing this year?
Taraka, that's a granted permit, and so we do have an option agreement over that permit, and it's actually under its first renewal process right now. And the way the option agreement is written is that when that renewal is granted, we have the option to take up 100% through a share-based payment to Taraka. And, based on what we know, and it being a long strike from BBM, we will be taking up that option. And we've already started doing some initial soil and termite area geochemistry along strike from BBM. So that's one target that might have something drillable on it for 100% Awalé property more rapidly than the other 4, which are applications going towards the northwest.
But so in other words, this year will be target generation work, and then the plan would be the next year actually start putting some drill holes in.
Yeah, that's right. So those other 4 permits, I mean, they're totally grassroots permits, so they will require due process of stream blegs, flying geophysics, all those things that progress towards targeted geochemistry and then rating and ranking and drilling. Every now and then, something might poke its head out as like, this is, a fantastic footprint, wonderful tenor. We should drill this now and not wait. But really, for the rest of it, it has to be rated, ranked, go through that grassroots exploration process.
You just announced that you started your drilling program. You have a 25,000 meter program planned for this year. Could you just break down how many meters will go where, how many meters will go charger?
Look, the bulk of that is going towards BBM and charger and those satellite, those potential satellite targets that I talked about at BBM as well. Those satellite targets will be air core drilling, which is, cheaper and rapid. And then a smaller percentage goes towards bringing along other pipeline targets like Lando, and then subject to the IP and what we see at Sceptre, but we have 2 deeper holes planned for Sceptre East at the moment.
And how many rigs will you start with, and how many do you have access to?
We've started with 1 diamond rig at the moment. There is a second one already on site, which we can ramp up if we think necessary. The idea at the moment is that we probably will ramp it up to drill at BBM, but and just to make sure that we get all that, some significant amounts of drilling into BBM and charger before wet season comes along. And then percussion rigs become available throughout the year. And so that's meaning RC or air core rigs. And we will use them as an as needed basis and team availability. So we take our quality control pretty seriously. So I don't want to stretch the team too much, and make by pushing too hard on one particular thing, and causing, problems from a quality control perspective. But yeah, so we can take up percussion like RC and air core drilling rigs when we need them throughout the year. There is availability in West Africa. There are plenty of reputable drilling companies that can undertake that for us.
Perfect. And how would we look in terms of sort of assaying results being released?
We tend to like to have our full ICP results because we think that's a very important part of the story. So that tends to take at least 6 weeks to get ICP results back. And that's subsequent to us drilling and cutting the core and sampling. So, we're probably looking at least sort of 3 months from the start of April. So, end of June into July.
Okay, and you have paused completely during the wet season, which I think starts in May.
Look, of late, it's been July, and July has been very wet. But, traditionally it's June, July, August. But lately it's been July, August, September. And when you're, right in the middle of that wet season, operationally it becomes difficult because, we're not spending lots of money on graveling roads or doing all those sorts of things. We're actually just trying to drill. And so from that perspective, when it's really wet, it does get hard to work. You can work in the shoulder seasons when it's only raining a few times a week. But when it's raining solidly every day, it can get very tough. And look, we do have a small team, so I like to use that time to give the team a break as well. And we sort of go on to a skeleton staff during that period. Making sure that we're still keeping things ticking over, but giving everyone, time away from the project and with their families and all those sorts of things.
So then if you talk more strategic questions, just could clarify, so once Newmont has fully exercised its earning option, how large will your carried interest production?
Look, at the end of the joint venture spend, they need to deliver a 2 million ounce resource minimum, and have spent $15 million on project expenditure. At which juncture, assuming they take up an option which we have from a local holder who has 10%, assuming they take up that 10% option buyout, they will have 75% and we will have 25%, at which, there should be a decision on, whether you're moving towards feasibility, and we would be looking to co-fund that exploration to hold our 25%. There are financing options within the agreement where we can reduce, by 2 lots of 5% to a 15% carried interest. That's if we do choose not to do any financing at all.
Okay, so you will at least have a 15% carried interest to production?
Yeah, that's right. So, but the idea is, I think we are looking pretty strongly at keeping our interest.
In terms of financing, when, how much, and also how you're thinking in terms of that? You're in a much better, stronger position now than a few months
Yeah, that's
back.
right. And look, as I said, I've been pretty busy talking to people. I still am. Still have a lot of interest in people we need to talk to. I think there's been a bit of a renewed interest not renewed. I guess there's always been interest from other strategics, but the recent results has probably made that interest stronger. So we've been having some conversations with other strategics as well. And so the idea is that we feel like we're in a position to make Awalé a strong company going into the future. So we're not rushing. We're actually not rushing into anything. We need to, explore all those avenues and try and create, a strong company that has some longevity into the future and the potential of, truly unlocking a new district with the district scale play that we have. So, we're not rushing into anything. We're finishing off speaking to all the people that have shown interest, and then also the other strategics that have shown interest as well. So, when we think we've come up with the right strategy to create a strong company, we'll move to do what we need to do to create that strong company.
Building on that, so where do you envision Awalé Resources in 3 years?
I would love to say that we've got 25% of something significant that's of Newmont size on the joint venture properties, and be finishing off, well and truly into feasibility, sort of proper feasibility studies on that, and then to have made some other discoveries on our 100% Awalé properties, which would really, that would be, I think, very satisfying for all our shareholders, but really satisfying for us personally as well, because we've sort of come into a new district and ended up with quite new ideas, and so to actually make some discoveries on the surrounding properties would be that would be a dream come true for sure.